Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today I am going to speak on the module Diet Survey from the paper Research Method and Fieldwork. The learning objective of this module are: number 1 is to discuss the various types of diet surveys, number 2 is to plan and organize the diet surveys, number 3 is to conduct the diet surveys at different level and its technique. First of all, let's discuss a brief introduction of the topic. The adequate diet and sound nutrition are essential for the good health. Not only are they crucial for the human survival, but they are also key factors in the prevention and recovery from the illness. They are the prerequisite for improving the quality of life of the people. Since diet has far-reaching influence on the health, it is essential to have an idea of the dietary pattern of the community. Information on the food consumption pattern is also essential for assessing the food needs of the population groups at national or at regional level. Now let's discuss why diet surveys are carried out. Diet surveys help to assess the consumption pattern of the people both in terms of the quality as well as the quantity. It also helps to know the inadequacies in the existing dietary pattern and formulate the suitable intervention strategies. To find the association between diet and the disease, such as nutritional deficiency disorders and diet-related chronic diseases, including the diabetes, hypertension, obesity, etc. This figure shows the weighment method of the diet survey at the household level. This figure shows how oral questionnaire method of the diet survey is conducted at individual level. The population unit to be covered for the diet survey may be classified under the heads, namely national or regional level studies covering large group of population or the entire country or that particular region. It can be held at the institutional level. The homogeneous group of the population residing in the institutions like the hostels, hospitals, jails, etc. are being covered. Those at the family or the individual level, those at the national level. To carry out the survey at the national level, the usual method employed is by computing the food balance sheet, that is FBS. By these food balance sheet, we mean the quantities of the various foods available for consumption at the retail level per head of the population, calculated from the total net supply. The data from the FBS thus tells us the food available at the country or the national or regional level, but not the food actually consumed by the people. At institutional level, for example, hostels, orphanage, hospitals, jails, etc. Two methods may be employed at the institutional level, and they are the inventory method, that is food list method, or actual weight, that is raw and the cooked method. Now let's talk about what is inventory method. This method is often employed in the institutions like hostels, army barracks, orphanage, home for the aged, etc., where homogeneous group of people take their meal from a common kitchen. In this method, the amounts of the foodstuff issued to the kitchen as per the records maintained by the warden are taken into consideration for computation of the consumption. No direct measurement or weighing is done. A reference period of 1 week is desirable. Now let's see what is actual weight method. In this method, the total raw food ready for cooking are weighed, taking into consideration the wastage of the food. In the same way, the total food cooked are also weighed. This procedure is repeated for at least 7 days. Now let's talk about the individual dietary intake survey, which is nothing but a 24-hour dietary recall method. Individual intake diet survey is carried out for the previous 24 hours. This provides scope for the assessment of the intra-family distribution of the food and thereby compute food and nutrient intake of the individual by age, gender, physiological status and activity. Let's see what is 24 hours dietary recall. In this method, a trained interviewer asks the subject to recall all food and drink taken in the previous 24 hours. It is a quick, easy method and it depends on the short-term memory but may not be the true representative of the person's usual intake. The food frequency questionnaire method is the one where the subject is given a list of around 100 food items to indicate his or her intake, that is frequency and the quantity per day or per week or per month. The food frequency questionnaire method is inexpensive and more represented method and it is relatively easier to use method. However, there are many limitations of the food frequency questionnaire method. The limitation is that it includes a very long questionnaire, so it takes longer time. There are some errors with estimating the serving size. The questionnaire method needs updating with new commercial food products to keep pace with the changing dietary habits. Now let's see what is dietary history. It is an accurate method for assessing the nutritional status. The information should be collected by a trained interviewer for a dietary history method. The details about the usual intake, types, frequency and timing needs to be obtained. However, in this technique, the cross-checking to verify the data is very important. There is one more method, that is food diary method. Here the food intake including the types and the amount should be recorded by the subject at the time of the consumption. The length of the collection period range between 1 to 7 days. This method is reliable but difficult to maintain. Now let's see what is observed food consumption method. This is the most unusual method in the clinical practices, but it is recommended for the research purposes. In this technique, the meal taken by the individual is weighed and contents are exactly calculated. This method is characterized by having a high degree of accuracy, but it is an expensive and a time and effort taking process. Now let's see the general guidelines for carrying out the diet survey in the community. The housewife who cooks and serves the food to the family will be the respondent in such type of technique. The purpose of the visit and the importance of the survey must be explained to the female before initiating the survey so as to elicit the factual information. The investigator gets familiarized with the local measures used and their corresponding weights and volumes. In the 24-hour recall diet survey, the all food consumed by the family members during the previous day consumed, including those cooked in the house as well as those from the outside, should be recorded in combination. The reference day of the diet survey should not be a festival day or a day of the celebration of any kind in that family, as the food consumption pattern on these days would be different from the normal days. In such cases, the diet survey should be carried out in the next house. The name, age, gender and other particulars of all the members who have taken part in the meal on that particular day should be entered in the performa chronological way. Particulars of the guest, if any, who participated in the meal should be included, and the name of these family member who did not participate in the meals should be deleted. if any child, pregnant and lactating women have participated in the supplementary feeding program such as in the ICDS program or midday meal program, etc. on the reference day, the particulars of the same such as the name, type, quantity consumed by each beneficiary should be recorded accurately. Effort should be made to elicit the information regarding the composition of the supplement from the ICDS workers concerned with that program in that village. There is a need to discourage the presence of the neighbors as spectators at the time of collecting the dietary information so that the housewife gives correct information. A set of the standardized cups and grocer's balance are used to record the intake. The cups are numbered from serial number 1, that is the largest size cup, to 12, which is the smallest size cup. The cups are used to help the housewives to recapitulate the volume of the preparations cooked and served to the individual member in the family. Now let's have a look at some of the very important steps for carrying out the individual intake diet survey. In such kind of survey, there is a need to record all the food preparation that were made at home or brought from outside and consumed on the previous day from early morning till night. To start with the information of the meal pattern, the menu and the raw ingredients used for each preparation used, information about the leftover food if any of their subsequent consumption on the same day must be recorded. There is a need to record the name of all the ingredients and the raw amount of each foodstuff used for each of the preparation. As far as possible, obtain the equivalent quantities of raw food such as cereals, pulses, etc. available in the house and weigh them in the grocer's balance, which is supplied with the kit, and record the weights to nearest grams. This should be done after entering the menu of the food preparation for the whole day. The next step is the total cooked volume of each of the preparation is recorded in terms of the standardized cups. For this purpose, the housewives may be asked to fill the vessel in which the preparation was made with water to the level up to which the food was prepared. The volume of the cooked food is assessed by measuring this water with the standardized cups provided. The quantity of each preparation consumed by each individual is assessed in terms of standard cups and is recorded accordingly. Intake of the preparation such as roti, chapati, eggs, etc. is assessed by noting the total number of the pieces cooked and number consumed by each individual. Standard cups or spoons are used to assess the quantities of the cooking oil, spices used, sugar used, etc. There should be need to record the quantity of the leftover food if any under leftover column with remarks such as consumed later in lunch or dinner or next day or given to others as the case may be. If the leftover food is consumed later in the day, the same has to be entered under the menu column and particulars of the individual quantities consumed should be recorded. Whenever leftover food of the previous day is consumed by a household on the reference day, there is a need to enter those particulars such as name of the preparation, the ingredients and the raw quantities used, total cooked volume and individual quantity consumed on the reference day. There is a need to ensure that the variation between the total quantity of the food reportedly prepared and the total of the quantities distributed among the members, including the leftover, is less than 10%. In case of the larger variations, there is a need to repeat the entire exercise. Now let's have a look at the examples of the volume of a standardized set of the cups and the spoon, which is shown here. It may be noted that the cups can be standardized in the respective institutions. There is a need to note down the cup number, volume carried by them in milliliter. For example, the cup 1, which measures up to 1400 ml, cup 2, which measures up to 1035, cup 3, which measures up to 750 ml, cup 4, which measures up to 520, cup 5 up to 350, cup 6 up to 235, cup 7 up to 200, cup 8 up to 140, cup 9 up to 105, cup 10 up to 82, cup 11 up to 65, cup 12 up to 30 ml. So this table shows us that TBS stands for the tablespoon, which is nothing but carrying the amount of 15 ml, whereas teaspoon is the one which carries the amount of 5 ml. Now let's have a look at the food and the nutrient intake of the individual. The average daily intake of the different food by individuals can be calculated according to different age, sex, physiological status and physical activity in that group. The median daily intake of various nutrients can be computed using food composition table. The nutritive value of the Indian foods can be understood. The intake will be compared with the recommended dietary allowances for the Indians, that is RDI, suggested by the Indian Council of Medical Research, that is ICMR expert group. Now let's talk about the strength and weaknesses of the different diet survey methods. First of all, we'll talk about the strength and weaknesses of the weighed food record. The strength of this technique, that it is the widely used method and there is precision of the portion sizes. However, if we talk about the weaknesses of the weighed food records, this method is high respondent burden. There is lot of misreporting in this technique. On the other hand, it is also an expensive method of making the food record. The food composition data is limited under this method. Now let's see about the strength and weaknesses of the estimated food records. Estimated food record is carried out using the household measures such as cups or the spoon, food photographs or food models. But this technique also has some strength and weaknesses. The strength include it as the widely used method. Here there is a low respondent burden than the weighed food diaries. The weaknesses of this method include the estimation of the portion size is difficult. There is again a lot of misreporting in the estimated food record as well. This technique is again expensive and the food composition data is limited. Now let's see the commonly used 24-hour recall methods with its strength and weaknesses. The strength of the 24-hour recall method is that it is a low respondent burden technique. This is suitable for the large scale surveys and this technique can be administered by the telephone. However, if we talk about the weaknesses of the 24-hour recall method, there is the estimation of the portion size only. Another weakness of this technique is that the single observation provides the poor measure of individual intake. There are biases in the recording which can be of the good or the bad food. This technique is again a memory dependent method as people find it difficult to recall. So this makes another weakness of this technique. If we talk about the multiple pass recall, this technique also includes some strength and weaknesses. The strength of this technique is there is an improved precision compared with the 24-hour recall method. This technique includes the low respondent burden. It is suitable for the large scale surveys and it can be administered by the telephone. However, the weaknesses include the estimation of portion size, and there is a bias in recording the good or bad food, and again this technique is memory dependent. Now let's see the strength and weaknesses of the food frequency questionnaire and semi-quantitative questionnaires. The strength of these techniques include the low respondent burden. This is suitable for the large scale surveys, and this technique can be self-completed and it can be posted as well. However, if we look at the weaknesses of these methods, the estimation of the portion size are difficult to be made. There is a possible over repeating of the healthy food under this technique, and it requires to be validated in relation to the reference method. If we talk about the household food surveys, this method also have some strength and weaknesses. The strength include that this method is suitable for the large scale surveys, and these methods are designed for monitoring the diet trends at the population level. However, one of the major weakness of this technique is data is not collected at the individual level. Now let's come to the method measuring the nutritional status. The nutritional assessment tools are frequently used in the clinical practice, but some have been developed scientifically for use in the public health studies. Now let's talk about some other important issues relating to the dietary assessment. In all the dietary assessment methods where food is not weighed, the portion size must be applied before the nutrient output can be calculated. There are a number of methods by which the portion size may be obtained, and these methods may be the field worker weighed certain food items on the individual behalf, the use of the photographic atlases showing the portion size of the commonly eaten food, data from the manufacturer, portion size collected from the previous weighed food records, and the household measures. The rigor required in applying the portion size is well illustrated by the methods used in North and South Ireland food composition surveys. The another important issues regarding the dietary assessment is the underreporting. A recently completed Food Standard Agency funded study project NO 8001 detecting and modeling the misreporting of the food intake with special reference to the underreporting in the obese has investigated the problem of underreporting, which is commonly recognized in association with the dietary assessment methodology. Now let's understand the major important facts regarding the different diet surveys. A change in the eating behaviors occurs when individuals are asked to record their intake. So that is an observation effect. The individual may misreport their changed eating behaviors, that is the reporting effect. So if we go to the surveys regarding the children and the elderly, we may find many observation effect and many reporting effect as well. The observation effect appears to have certain micronutrients, specifically in those women reduce their fat intake and men reduce their alcohol intake count. The observation effect in the studies reported leads to the decrease of a significant percentage of energy intake. The reporting effect is more variable depending on the intake measurement used. The reporting effect does not appear to be the macronutrient specific. The misreporting effect is more marked among the individual when the measurements are carried out in their own homes as compared to the controlled laboratory settings. In the food surveys, it is also difficult to predict the misreporting based on the subject, gender, age, BMI, dietary restraints, and other different parameters. This could be because the observation and reporting effects are both normally distributed and accounts for a large percentage of the variance in the discrepancy between the reported and the actual intake. So, in the diet surveys, it is very important to recognize that the current state of many data sets in the diet surveys are difficult to interpret. The removal of the lowest energy intake to basal metabolic rate values from a data set does not remove all or even the majority of the underreporters and thus distort the data further. To have a better interpretation of the future dietary surveys, the important point must be kept in mind. The use of the weight diet record of at least 7 consecutive days should be done as the method of choice. This technique should be made in context of the energy balance. Ideally, the volunteer should be weighed before, during and after the study and should include an energy expenditure measurement. The sample should be balanced with respect to the different parameters rather than random sample selection. The duration, representativeness and the type of the data collected should be analyzed adequately. The surveys should feature the intensive component in which the subsample mirrors the structure of the main sample. Now let's summarize what we have learned so far from this particular module. A dietary assessment is a comprehensive evaluation of person's food intake. It tells about the estimation of the dietary intake, which focuses on the amount food consumed by an individual or group, or it can be used to assess the adequacy of the diet to meet the food and the nutrient requirement. It also established the presence of a link between the dietary factors and a given health outcome, and also to monitor the response of the patient in manipulation of the diet in the clinical setting. There are different units of the diet surveys which can be specified at the national level, at the institutional level, at family or individual levels. Investigator has to select the appropriate method for the purpose and the target group of the study. Ultimately, all survey methods are dependent on the motivation, compliance and ability of the subject to report accurately their habitual food intake. Dietary assessment method work best in combination with the other method for the assessment of the nutritional status of the population. Thank you.